Okay, thank you so much for coming back to Media Telling the Future of Gaming. And my name is Vanessa Goff-Yu, and I'm from Bidstack, the in-game advertising platform that specialises in native in-game advertising. We do direct and programmatic advertising across multiple platforms, including mobile, PC, and console as well. And with me, I have Dr. Julian from Formula One, who's the head of digital business initiatives and esports. And I have Leeston Bryant, who's the senior marketing manager at McLaren Racing for esports. So, Julian, why don't you just give yourself a little bit of an intro?
Sure. Hi, Vanessa, and hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I'm Julian. I look after all of Formula One's esports activities and also supporting the wider digital strategy at Formula One. Joined Formula One in 2017, July 2017, during the start of call it the transformation that the company has been seeing since the acquisition from Liberty, and have been on the journey of building up the digital department and all of our esports activities within this space.
Cool. Leeston?
Brilliant. Hi, guys. I'm Leeston Bryant. I work at McLaren in the esports department. I've been there for a couple of years now, and I head up everything that we do in esports. So that might be managing the McLaren Shadow esports team that competes in various series, and that's also from the commercial development, social media, licensing, merchandising of all of the racing initiatives we enter into.
Cool, awesome. So let's start with the basics. I mean, a lot of advertisers are lumping gaming and esports as buzzwords and lumping the two strategies together. Julian, I'll come to you first. How would you describe esports, and what do you think are the key differences between gaming and esports?
I think that esports is a subset of gaming. Gaming is an entire industry of which the pinnacle of the industry sits in esports. I mean, the traditional definition of esports is competitive gaming. And, I think Formula One has, been in the kind of gaming industry for some time now with our official game, but really only in the past 2.5 years entered into esports, forming our proposition within, professional gaming, high-end, elite level gaming, where you have the world's best compete on a Formula One game and put on a spectacle while we do that. I think that both of them are incredibly important parts to any strategy that a brand is looking at. So, I think a lot of brands tend to think about esports as, something that exists on its own. Certainly at Formula One, we think of it as a holistic approach. You've got esports that serves a lot of the objectives that you want to reach, but you also need to consider gaming, sort of, where you're able to kind of touch the more casual gamers, maybe the less hardcore users, as part of that kind of wider strategy for us at least, as we look to kind of build that outreach into a younger demographic, which is one of the core objectives of us operating in this space as we look to build a pipeline, our pipeline of fans into our sport.
Okay, and coming over to you, Easton, why should brands not, lump gaming and esports together in terms of their strategy?
I think that one of the things that we'll touch on later is that the reason a lot of brands are now interested in the space is because that there is a massively younger audience than perhaps you can get from traditional advertising models within esports. But actually that audience can be fragmented and is made up of lots of different things. So you might have one person who is a fan of elite level esports. You might have another person who casually watches a couple of highlight reels from what's happened on Fortnite or a competitive shooter, etc. So I think there are as many different types of esports as there are sports, and there's a big difference between gaming and esports.
Okay, cool. So we're already starting to talk a little bit about the audience and reaching a younger demographic. Now, I was at a conference run by Marketing Research Society recently for sports and gaming. And Matt Roberts, who's from Formula One as well, said that Formula One were looking to create a gaming sort of section within the fan zone at a couple of the live events. Now, you know, with brands like F1 and McLaren, how important is it, Julian, for you to have these additional touch points?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I think a lot of it stems from our unique position, certainly in motorsports, esports, to have the ability to use or to have a virtual product that really heavily overlaps with our real world product. The fact that, you know, our top level gamers compete with a wheel and a pedal and a simulator is a very unique proposition, certainly in our genre of esports, and something that we can use to our advantage as we look to use this to, you know, provide immersive experiences to our fans. You know, that example that you mentioned around having a game zone. This is something that we've had, you know, for many years now. And, you know, last year in 2019, 18 of the 21 Grand Prix, we have a dedicated F1 esports activation at the fan zone. And that's specifically using gaming and esports as a way to provide, you know, engagement and an immersive experience for our race goers who are, you know, going for the race. But, you know, we want to give them an experience of what it's like driving a Formula One car. And in the absence of being able to actually jump in a Formula One car, we have the, you know, the opportunity to use our gaming rigs, our simulators, our esports rigs as a way to kind of bridge that gap. And that's really important for us because, yes, esports, you know, one of the objectives of it for us for sure is reaching out to a younger audience. But we're also, as we're exploring this space, there's a real ability for us to use esports to break down barriers for our fans. You know, I always use the comparison where in other sports, you have, you know, the ability to pick up a tennis racket or a basketball or a football and immediately play in your local court or local field. So you're immediately able to kind of immerse yourself and actually get, you know, gain some appreciation for what our top level athletes actually do day in and day out. And I think we have a little bit of a disconnect there in motorsports because not everyone has the opportunity to, you know, to experience karting or to, you know, to drive a race car. So gaming and esports helps to bridge that gap a little bit, and in turn increase the engagement that we can get from our existing fan base, as well as we kind of open up to a new audience to kind of come into the sport in that way as well.
Okay, cool. And same with you, Leeston and McLaren. Why is it so important, you know, to have these opportunities to have these additional touch points with fans?
I think that whilst I absolutely love motorsport, I think that the one issue that we can say with motorsport sometimes is that it isn't as accessible as we would like it to be. And I think that through the initiatives which McLaren's run, such as McLaren Shadow, World's Fastest Gamer, we're giving people that opportunity to get behind the scenes of motorsport. And also it's an additional touch point which adds to the experience. So I used an example when I was talking to a friend the other day. We have Bonner Huis, who raced for the Shadow team, and he'd actually said that for him, when he'd been racing in the F1 Esports series for us, he started to understand motorsport a little bit more, some of the technicalities behind it, some of what goes into running a team. And he actually said that he started to enjoy motorsport more through playing the game. And that's something that we're finding over and over again. It's actually sort of creating this 360 fan loop for McLaren and other teams, and something which we think is incredibly valuable.
Cool. So kind of just going back a couple of steps and thinking about why F1 and McLaren got involved with esports gaming in the first place. Julian, I'm going to come to you first. What kind of prompted F1 to build a strategy around esports and gaming in the first place?
I think for us, it was very much around an acknowledgement that our sport has an aging fan base. And we were at a point in 2017 where we're going through this digital transformation, identifying what are the key pillars within digital being sort of one of the key drivers for us to reach out to a younger audience. What is out there that we can actually start to build our capabilities in and leverage for our sport? And, at the time, and certainly now for sure, esports as an industry, was growing tremendously. Sim racing at the time was, growing at a respectable pace, but certainly not at the level that we're seeing right now. But at the time, we saw this industry as a promising one. And so we took the plunge a little bit. I think it was in many ways a leap of faith, because it's very different to what Formula One had ever done in the past. McLaren is one of the few teams and brands really who had, really embraced the world of esports so early on. And so for us, we saw a lot of potential there. We knew that we needed to be creative and have some courage on how we kind of build our capabilities in places that we may not necessarily have, a lot of expertise in, but can start to build our expertise in and have great partners to help us bring us along that journey as well. So it was really centered around an acknowledgement that how can we build and reach out to a younger audience, create something that, speaks to them in a language that they understand, provide them with another touch point with the world of Formula One, help them understand the world of Formula One in a different way. And get more people consuming Formula One through gaming, which makes a lot of sense in hindsight. So, that was the main reason. But as we've continued to explore the space, we've noticed that esports for us actually plays a lot of fundamental roles that we can actually use, not just in terms of reaching out to a younger audience. You've got the accessibility perspective of, providing more immersive experiences for our existing fan base as well, to providing thrilling racing content, albeit virtually, but thrilling racing content that you just cannot replicate in real life, to, having amazing stories where we have gamers transitioning to becoming real life racers, as we've seen, time and time again, and what McLaren does really well with the Shadow Project and World Fastest Gamer in the past, where they've kind of used that to their advantage to, blur the lines between virtual and real, to kind of tell that incredible storyline that is very unique to the world of motorsports.
Cool. So, Leeston, you and McLaren specifically with esports again, what prompted that?
I mean, I think that the two main reasons, boiling it down, are commercial and both audience. So we could see the growth of gaming. Obviously, we've all seen stats recently about revenues in gaming being more than TV and music combined, and then esports sitting within that. So obviously, you want to diversify your product set and be a part of that growth. And then I think from that brand point of view, the accessibility that you can provide through esports as a way into F1, into McLaren is really incredible. I think that whilst we've been on this journey, there's been so many authentic, incredible stories that we've been able to tell, which we wouldn't have been able to tell if we'd spent our dollars on just a regular advertising campaign. I think a great example, when we started World's Fastest Gamer, the prize for that was a job as a McLaren simulator driver. So Rudy Van Buren won that prize. He joined McLaren. He worked in our millions of pounds sim, testing out tire setups, race strategies, all of those things. And he went from being a gamer, being a kitchen salesman, to coming and working at McLaren and traveling the whole world. And I think what is incredible about that as well is that he actually earned that. He came into McLaren and he broke down doors, and he was, a second off a factory driver quite quickly. And he was able to give incredible feedback, which actually helped our race strategy. So the fact that you can create such an authentic story, there are very few places where you can do that. And I think for me, the final story in terms of Rudy, which I love, and he's a great guy as well. So he drove James Hunt's Formula One car at Goodwood Festival of Speed. And James Hunt was quite a tall fella, as F1 fans will know, and had to cut off his shoes sometimes to get in the Formula One car. Rudy Van Buren also had to cut off the top of his boots to fit in a Formula One car and drive it around Goodwood. He's driving an absolute legends car, and who would have thought that he could have done that from playing R-Factor 2 with us? So for us, that is incredible, and that has sort of really led us onto the journey that we have with McLaren Shadow and our partnerships with Logitech and Splunk and lots of other brands. So really, really exciting. I'm very passionate about it.
Awesome. So I also read a piece of news last week that McLaren signed a partnership with Loche Esports as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that partnership and how that came about?
Totally. So we've known the guys at Veloce for quite a while, and I think what is quite special about them as an esports agency is that they really want to win and compete at an elite level, but they also understand what marketeers and brand people need to get out of esports. And I think that actually one of the biggest stories that we've learned throughout this journey is that the creation of content and the building of that audience is a lot more important to some people than, you know, what the actual successes are. So you obviously need to have success to have that authentic story, but at the same time, the fact that you can go behind the scenes, do tips and tricks videos. We created a video with Lando where we had him playing the Formula One 2019 game when it first came out, with footage of him racing in Paul Ricard in real life. And that comparison there was absolutely incredible. And it's that type of content which interests brand marketers and brings them into the space. So we look forward to doing a lot more of that type of thing with Veloce, and also just creating a pipeline of talent to race in all of the esports series and the F1 esports series, which we really enjoy racing in.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So going back to Julian, now you guys are just about to release the next edition of F1, obviously with Codemasters who build that game. Can you give us kind of a little kind of lowdown on what's it like working with such an awesome game developer like Codemasters, who's also a Bidstack partner as well, and how that contact came about?
Yeah, I mean, Codemasters is the best in their field when it comes to creating the games that they do. And we've got a terrific relationship with them, on all of our esports activities, as you would probably expect, because we are playing on their platform. They are a very important stakeholder as we kind of navigate the field of esports. I think that kind of going back to, a big part of our success here is making sure that we have the right partners to kind of come on this journey with us in Codemasters, along with Gfinity, our esports operator. We're sort of in this together as we sort of navigate the space of esports. And Codemasters knows the game inside out. They know what the game can do. They know what the game will be able to do 2 to 3 years from now. And we've got a really great relationship with them because we have an open channel when we have feedback either from the teams, from our F1 esports series, or from other stakeholders as well. We're able to kind of feedback these kind of things that we're hearing into Codemasters, and obviously with game development of it, their game development cycle. So whether it's in 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months, those requirements are captured and get delivered. I think that the fact that we now within our game, for example, have a dedicated F1 esports tab within the official commercial build of the game is a perfect example of the great working relationship that we have with Codemasters, having launched esports at the back end of 2017. So yeah, they're a terrific partner, really knowledgeable in the space, and yeah, we've got a great collaborative working relationship with them.
Okay, cool, awesome. So now we kind of like slightly touched upon it in terms of brand activations. Now we've seen in the last couple of years some pretty interesting esports sponsorships and activations happening, with KFC and League of Legends, obviously McLaren, Loche, Bumble and Gen G, and BMW with, their 5 esports partnerships now. Leeston, why do you think brands are now looking into esports, and how can brands get involved with your esports division?
I think brands are looking into esports because I think they can see that, as well as the accessibility point of view, the sort of connection and entertainment that you get from esports is incredible. So you can have people in a lobby all talking together. When they're racing, you can see the faces, which is something that you haven't been able to do in motorsport. And I think when you get a lot of these often young audiences and consumers and you tell them an authentic story, you can keep that consumer with you for their lifetime if you keep talking to them in the right way, because they'll become your brand advocate. So I think if you're looking at esports as a marketing channel, it can be one of the richest ones possible if you're willing to do that work to properly understand your audience. So I think that everything that's happening, obviously, with CV19, where esports has been the only sport, has brought the attention of people who might have dismissed esports. And I think what I would just hope is that all of those people remember the great platform that esports has given people around the world when we go back to real sport.
Cool. And same for you, Julian.
Yeah, perfectly articulated by Leeston. Nothing to add to that.
Okay, cool. So, sorry, Leeston, did you want to add something?
Yeah, sorry, I missed off the second part of your question, and I just wanted to say that in terms of what McLaren's actually doing in esports, we have a esports program where we participants can enter via Project Cars 2, which will be launched very shortly. And that will have physical events when we can have physical events. And people will be able to win an incredible prize through that. And it should have a decent audience as well. So that's something which endemic and non-endemic brands can get involved with sponsoring. We also have the McLaren Shadow team, which compete in great series like the F1 Esports series and any other racing series, which I think brings an audience and a great stage to show off the talents of our racers.
And I suppose from an F1 side, just to kind of feed in from that other side of the coin, we've got our F1 Esports series, which is, you know, what I would call the backbone to our F1 esports program. We have got a lot of other esports products that we've recently launched, like the virtual GPs and the challenge events. But the F1 esports series, which is the virtual equivalent to the real life races that we put on, I'd say is the flagship, you know, competition that we put on. And, you know, adjacent to that, we've got, as I mentioned, in 18 of the 21 Grand Prix, the F1 Esports activations at the Grand Prix themselves that, you know, obviously provide an immersive experience. And, you know, we also launched our first ever Chinese championship last year, where, you know, we're working with our promoter, Justin Telesports there, to basically find the fastest Chinese gamer, because, you know, we feel very strongly that esports as a vehicle to kind of help us, you know, further develop our presence within China as a priority market, and with the potential that we can really build from a fan base perspective in motorsport and in Formula One is significant. So being able to use esports in that context as well, I think is very exciting. And obviously we work with tremendous brands, both on our F1 Esports series with the likes of DHL and Aramco, who are kind of main sponsors in the real life racing to kind of come to the virtual world with us. And also Fanatec, who, you know, do terrific work when it comes to the equipment that we need to use to compete. And plenty of opportunities, both from endemic and non-endemic brands to come into the space with us, whether it is with the China Championship or with our F1 Esports series as well. So I think the thing that I really like about esports is that it provides huge amounts of flexibility and creativity to, you know, to define specific activations that you can actually service to, you know, each of your different partners. Because the reality is the partners that you will be getting on board will be a very diverse set of partners. But, you know, to deliver their individual objectives through esports, I think has been really exciting for us, you know, as we look to, you know, create value for our sponsors, whether it is tying existing opportunities like the DHL fastest lap that we do in the real world and replicating that in the virtual world, or the Pirelli pole position and doing that in the virtual world, or a completely new activation that we do specific to esports, like with the DHL 50 fastest campaign, or the store flagship store takeover that we did with New Balance as well a couple of years ago. So yeah, plenty of opportunities, exciting space, and yeah, very excited about it.
Okay, last question to wrap things up as we're sort of rolling over a little bit. Leeston, what's the singular most important bit of advice that you can give to brands about getting involved in esports?
I think it's the same advice that I would give around any sort of brand marketing activity, and that's test and learn. When we entered the space in 2017 with World's Fastest Gamer, we had a good idea about esports and we understood the audience somewhat, but that journey and that development has increased over the 3 years to the point where I think we now have a great set of assets and a great knowledge base to activate from. But we didn't get there on the first day. So I think trialing different things, minimum viable product, get something out there, test it, tweak it, try something else is a great way to work. And just try and be as authentic as possible, because it's definitely an audience that can spot when something isn't authentic.
I completely agree. Julian?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Leeston on the test and learn approach. It's something that I live by from a cultural perspective. Certainly what I advocate for the teams to kind of work around. I think for me, it's knowing the esports ecosystem and knowing where you're playing, because esports as an industry using esports as a term is not a monolithic thing, right? It's as diverse as using the term sports. So in the same way that swimming is different from tennis and is different from motorsports, the same can be said about League of Legends, is different from Fortnite, is different from Formula One or FIFA. So knowing exactly what sport you're thinking of and knowing where you are operating or where you're playing in the ecosystem is very important, because you have very unique challenges and you'll have very unique opportunities specific to that particular genre. So I'd say, yeah, just make sure that you know where you're playing and tailor your strategy accordingly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time, guys. We are available, or Julian and Leeston are available to take questions on Twitter. And thank you so much to MediaTel, and thank you for watching. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.